goods that you can leave your money behind and take those items with you. That'll go through dinner, but please go over, get your drinks, find your seat, make your last bids on the silent auction, and we'll be back with you in a few minutes. If you are a past inductee to the Aviation Hall of Fame, past inductee, I'm looking at Dan right here. If you could join us, please, over at the silent auction table, that'd be fantastic. If you are a past inductee, not an inductee tonight, please join us over at the silent auction table. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame. How are you? All right, I'll try one more time. Welcome to the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame. How is everybody tonight? Thank you. My name is Kurt Stanich. I'm the president of the organization, and on behalf of the board of directors, we are all very thrilled that you've chosen to spend your evening here with us. In 1985, Carl Gell retired from the Wisconsin Aeronautics Commission with two goals. One of them to being writing a book and published about state aviation history in Wisconsin, and the other the formation of an Aviation Hall of Fame. Soon the Hall of Fame was incorporated, and its first three honorees were honored in less than 1 year. Since then, we've honored over 140 individuals. These airline pilots, combat veterans, instructors, mechanics, inventors, educators, entrepreneurs, volunteers, and most of all, enthusiasts, weren't recognized because they had a life goal of being inducted into a Hall of Fame. They didn't pursue a career because of the recognition it would bring them. Rather, they were inducted because they honestly and humbly pursued their heartfelt passion. And along the way of that pursuit, their love for aviation, and more importantly for people, gained recognition of their peers, their friends, and their family who submitted a nomination on their behalf. Their selection for induction honors them not for what they've done for themselves, but instead what they've done for others. In keeping with our tradition over the last 37 years, we are honored to be joined by 15 past inductees, and it is my privilege to ask you to help me welcome them back to the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame stage. Starting with Archie Hinkleman from 1994. Dwayne Essie from 2005. Tom Hagee, 2012. Jeff Baum, 2013. Dick Hanusa, 2016. Jerome LeBaron, 2018. Don Winkler, 2018. Dick Schmidt from 2019. Tad Olstrom from 2020. Dr. Bill Blank, Dan Knutson, Don Keel, all from 2021. And our last year's inductees, Peter Bunce, John Dorsey, and Rose Dorsey. One more round of applause, please, as they take their seats. To formally begin our evening, we have the honor of having scouts from Troop 2 in Appleton in the Bay Lakes Council. They've been chartered for 103 years, and their scoutmaster, Ron, has been leading them for the past 23. The color guard this evening is Isaac, Quinn, and Caleb, who will be presenting our nation colors. Now, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please welcome the President of the General Aviation Manufacturers Association, retired Colonel of the United States Air Force, and 2022 Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame inductee, Pete Bunce.
Ladies and gentlemen, those of you that can, please rise. Color Guard, present the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, with freedom and democracy under threat in so many parts of the world, we think tonight of Israel, Ukraine, the Straits of Taiwan, Nigeria, and all parts of the world that we see people under attack. And this flag, this ideal that it stands for, is so vitally important, not only to us as Americans, but to the rest of the planet. So will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard, post. Retreat. Please be seated.
Thank you, Pete. And finally, before dinner at a local air show more than a decade ago, I got to meet an air show pilot that was dedicated to what he was doing and his wonderful wife, Judy. We've fortunately kept touch over the years, and I'm happy to have him come forward to perform our invocation. Please help me welcome aerobatic pilot, award-winning scout leader, and 2021 inductee, Dr. Bill Blank.
Thank you, Kurt. Lord, help us remember as we walk along life's pathway that whatever we might say, let it be only the truth. Whatever we think, say, or do, let it be fair to all concerned. Whatever steps we take in life, let them build goodwill and better friendships. Whatever goals we strive to accomplish, let them be beneficial to all concerned. We ask you to help us to never lose sight of our many blessings. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your meal. We'll start the formal program about 7 o'clock. Thanks for being here. I hope everybody's enjoying your dinner. Not to interrupt it, but we saw these postcards up here that look really, really neat. And I noticed when I went over to by the silent auction table that you can bid on the actual artwork that is on this postcard on your table. So while you're waiting for dinner to come out, feel free to make your way over to our silent auction table and make your final bids. We'll be closing that down in about 10 to 15 minutes. Everything that you're bidding on tonight goes directly to fund our scholarship program, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So thank you for putting all of your money at that table and not taking any home with you. final opportunity to put your bids in for the silent auction. I've already received some tips, if you know what I mean, to shut it down now. So if you want to put your last bids in and win what you want, go over and make your bid. We'll start in just a few minutes. Two-minute warning for the silent auction, final drinks, and then if you could please start to find your seats, and we'll get going with the rest of tonight's ceremony. 2 minutes. Well, good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope your dinner was as enjoyable as the company on your table. As you grab your final drinks and your seats, the silent auction is closed. Can I get a round of applause for everybody who both donated items and bid? Thank you very much. Before we move into our official ceremony, I also have a couple other people I'd like to thank. These individuals have all contributed countless hours to make this ceremony happen tonight. So if you hear your name, could you please stand? First to our member volunteers, Joni Vilo in the back. Could you please stand, please? She's on our scholarship committee. Cindy Picorni and Lynn Balderrama, who helped with the selfie photos. Lynn, I know you're back there. Cindy, I'm not sure where you are. There she is. Thank you guys very much. Scott Weideman, our volunteer event photographer. Look for his camera and you will find Scott. Scott, where are you? And maybe he's out taking pictures. If I see him come in, we'll recognize him again. A couple people who could not be here. Where, do you see him? There he is. In the corner on the left, weighing in with a camera of 45 pounds, Scott Weideman. Thank you very much for taking photos tonight. A couple people who couldn't be in here, but I can't help but mention John Helminiak, longtime member. He serves on our induction selection committee. And also Dan Silvers. If you've not been to our website, our new website, which is wahf.org, please take a few minutes to go there. Dan and a couple of our directors, who you'll meet in a couple minutes, spent the entire year revamping our entire website, and it is fantastic. It's also an option for you to see all the Forward in-Flight members, or Forward in-Flight magazines from the past. But there's a catch. You have to be this thing called a member of the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame to get that wonderful thing. So if you'd like to see all those, or if you'd just like to be a member, we'd love to have you as part of our organization. Finally, I'd like to thank Rose Dorsey. Where's Rose? Rose. There she is. Past president of the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame. She has helped with this ceremony incredibly, done a lot of work for that, but also reinvigorated Forward in Flight and membership and sponsorship. And I'm sure it's very easy for me to stand here and say, we are all glad you're back. Thank you. And finally, to our board of directors, again, when you hear your name, please stand. Vice President Jim Zulsdorf. Secretary Henry Peterson. There he is in the back, thank you. Treasurer Colleen Weber. Colleen, thank you very much. And our directors, Wynn Williams. Hey, there he is. Jill Mann, who's over by the silent auction, she's in the back there. John Dorsey. And Scott Green. Scott, where are you? There he is. John and Scott were the two directors that also spent countless hours with Dan getting our website revamped. Two directors who couldn't be here tonight are also Jimmy Saikovich and Pat Whedon. Thank you. Just wanted to say to the board that we've been through some significant changes this year, and look at where we are. There's a bright light on the horizon of this organization because of all of your hard work and dedication. It is a privilege to serve with all of you, so thank you. Each year, you might have noticed that we do the silent auction idea where you leave all your money at the table and walk away with something that you like to hang on your wall or read by chance. Those donations fund our scholarship program, and we recognize the top aviation scholars who are going on to an aviation career degree program. The recipients attend universities throughout the country and are building careers that will one day change the face of aviation and the world. Our scholarship chair is Wynn Williams, and I'd like to invite Wynn up to the stage, please, to pronounce our scholarship winners for this year.
There was a time when I could have got here a little faster. Our scholarships this year, we were able to give $11,750 in scholarships. If you look in your program, you'll see pictures and a short thumbnail sketch of our scholars, Grace Cajon, Josie Bolter, Madison Rofers, Kaya Barrett, Angelo Bratner, Elijah Pagel, and Rowan Andreas. And I think we're quite fortunate tonight to have Josie Bolter from SIU, Southern Illinois University, who's going to give you a little talk about what she's been doing. So Josie, if you'll come up here, she'll be able to get here a lot faster than I did.
Okay, thank you, Wynn. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start off by saying that I'm a better pilot than I am public speaker, so that's why I have my phone with me. But again, my name is Josie Bolter, and I'm currently majoring in aviation technologies and minoring in aviation flight at Southern Illinois University. As he mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Flying Salukis, which is the flight team at Southern Illinois University. And last weekend, our flight team placed first at the NIFA Region 8 competition, go Dogs, and qualified for nationals in May. Last year, last year our national competition was actually held here, so that was really cool, especially being from this area. But I've recently taken an interest in seaplane flying, so I'm kind of looking into those opportunities and flying in the wilderness. So anyways, I just want to say a big thank you to the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame and the Scholarship Committee for this amazing opportunity and helping fuel my future in aviation. Thank you.
Thank you to you both, and also to our scholarship committee. We do give these out every year, so a call for nominations or applications to the scholarship committee. We love to give away our money, and we love to give it away to those who are doing great things with aviation. Aviation Wisconsin has a very long history, starting with balloon flying. In 1859 was the first recorded flight of a balloon, and that continued all the way until the Wright brothers' flight in 1903. We had our first flight in the state in 1909. Our first woman took to the air in 1912, and we had the youngest pilot ever licensed in the country in 1916. World War I changed aviation and the way people looked at it, and especially here at home. There was a son of a Wisconsin senator who grew up in Milwaukee, who came back and started talking about what aviation can do, not just in wartime, but in peacetime. He gave a talk to the Milwaukee Social Club and promised them that aviation will bring a new way of doing things and convince the city to build the first publicly funded airport in the state. That gentleman was Billy Mitchell, ended up being General Billy Mitchell, father of the modern Air Force. That airport then became a stopping ground for airmail pilots as airmail flying proliferated around the United States. And there was a route that went from Chicago to Minneapolis through Milwaukee. There's a problem, though, at night, that pilots were making their way by flying from burning fire to burning fire along the route. Sometimes the fires went out, sometimes they missed relighting them. And so a company in Sheboygan called Kohler figured out a way to use power generators and have electric lighted airway beacons, making airways much more safe for our pilots. And one of those Chicago airmail pilots got together with a group of investors from St. Louis and figured out how to fly a plane for the first time from New York to Paris. There's a replica of his airplane hanging right out on top above the bar when you walked in. Charles Lindbergh was a graduate of the University of Wisconsin. These people and places, these planes and places, had one thing in common, that it took people to make it all happen. And without those people dedicated to the decisions they made to chase their passions and change the world through aviation, we wouldn't have those firsts. On our selection committee each year, we kind of go back and forth, a little tongue-in-cheek, on what firsts are left. Steve has flown every Cub that ever existed, so you can't be the first one to fly a Cub anymore. And there's first women and men doing certain things. There's first flights. There's first round the worlds. Those are all done. So we kind of talk about what's the next first. Well, I promise you that all of our inductees here tonight, both past and present, create those firsts every day for people that come and see them. It's their first flight in an airplane, first time landing at an airport, or even visiting an airport. Those first experiences might be the firsts that propel aviation into the future. I received a letter from a gentleman that said, "Visit to the airport, no headset required." And this grandfather talked about bringing his young grandchildren out to the airport for the first time on a sunny April afternoon to view airplanes taking off for the first time, much like he did with his own children. They spent hours there, probably a few more hours than Grandma wanted to spend there. But he ended the letter by saying, "And for the first time, now Grandpa has a student pilot certificate." Our inductees tonight help people with those kind of firsts and that don't make it necessarily into the history books. But I guarantee you these firsts change the future for that person and other people that they meet. It's my honor to introduce to you tonight, finally, the 2023 class of inductees, Merton Baker, Tom Bouchard, Lynn Erickson, and Stephen Krogh. Round of applause for our inductees, please. And now presenting General Merton Baker for enshrinement into the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame, Vice President Mr. Jim Zulsdorf.
Thank you, Kurt. Welcome to our attendees and also those viewing on YouTube. I'm Jim Zulsdorf, and it's my distinct pleasure and privilege to induct our first honoree, Major General Merton Baker. Kindly draw your attention to this video.
Like many in his generation, Merton Baker got his first airplane ride in a surplus Curtiss Jenny. At 5 years old, Mert was too short to see out the cockpit, but that ride at the Fort Atkinson Airport in 1929 lit a spark that would lead him to bigger and better airplanes. Merton W. Baker, nicknamed Mert, was Flight Commander of the U.S. Air Force 42nd Tactical Electronic Warfare Squadron, based at Takili Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand from February 1968 to January of 1969. Mert flew as an aircraft commander in the EB-66 aircraft, and he and his crew helped to protect countless fighter and bomber crews from North Vietnamese air defenses. The EB-66s gathered information about enemy radars and frequencies, information vital to bombing mission planners. And they flew during bombing missions to locate new threats and jam enemy radars. U.S. Air Force bombing missions deep into North Vietnam always required EB-66 support, but there were relatively few EB-66s available. That meant a high rate of missions for EB-66 airplanes and their crews. In his 12 months in Vietnam, Mert flew 150 electronic countermeasure missions with over 600 hours in 3 different models of the EB-66 aircraft. On one mission of March of 1968, Mert and his EB-66 crew were tasked with jamming enemy radars to protect a large force of Republic F-105 Thunder Chief fighter bombers that were attacking targets near the North Vietnamese capital city of Hanoi. It was a period of the war when the North Vietnamese defenders were increasingly aggressive, and the U.S. Air Force was experiencing a high rate of aircraft losses. A large force of North Vietnamese MiG interceptors awaited the attackers and might have inflicted heavy losses on the F-105s, but Mert's aircraft used a new tactical decoy maneuver that day that misdirected the MiGs away from the incoming F-105s. It was a risky tactic for the EB-66, but it worked, and the F-105s bombed their targets and returned to base without losing a single aircraft. For that mission, Mert Baker was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. In this rare interview, Mert recounted one mission that exemplified the dangers they faced.
That was near the end of the whole tour when the B-52s were making round-the-clock raids in formation on North Vietnam. And it was kind of a moonlit night. We were in an orbit to do jamming, to cut radars down against the B-52s. And I looked up because there was a way on the canopy of the B-56, so all you had to do was kind of look around. I looked up and we were right under a stream of B-52s with the bomb doors open.
Holy cow.
We either got assigned the wrong orbit or the B-52s were off track, but it really didn't matter.
It was hardly the first time Mert had faced danger in a cockpit. In March of 1944, as a newly minted second lieutenant with a new pair of pilot's wings, he was assigned to the 829th Squadron, 485th Bomb Group, 15th Air Force, as a co-pilot in a consolidated B-24 Liberator heavy bomber, based at Venosa, Italy. From there, he flew 35 missions as co-pilot in a B-24 called Homeward Angel. Most of Mert's 10-man B-24 crew survived the war, with the loss of just one. Navigator Joe Berkowitz was killed by a 20mm cannon shell in a fighter attack over Hungary in July of 1944.
We knew a lot of what he did, although he didn't sit down and brag about it or talk about it, but Dad was a co-pilot, and the navigator sat right behind the two pilots, and he was killed when a Focke-Wulf 190 attacked them and fired a 20mm shell, and it went right through his flak jacket. And 50 years later, when Dad was telling me about that, you know, it was still emotional to him that he lost that crew member.
When World War II ended, Mert piloted Douglas C-54 Skymasters, repatriating Allied soldiers, sailors, and airmen who had been held in Japanese prisoner of war camps. He left active duty in November 1945. Called back into active service in 1953, he instructed pilots in the Lockheed T-33 jet trainer and the Boeing B-47 Stratojet. In 1957, he was assigned to the Boeing Company in Wichita as a B-52 flight test and acceptance pilot, and later to the Cessna Company for the T-37 jet trainer and its combat variant. After his year in Vietnam, he served as the Air Force's plant representative at General Dynamics and Fairchild Republic, and as commander of the Air Force Contract Management Division of the Air Force Systems Command, where he oversaw some 3,400 employees, managing 12,000 contracts with a face value of $44 billion.
You know, I think military officers are, I'm not saying not the best parents, but they're kind of strict parents. I remember one day at the dinner table, this was at McConnell, Wichita, Dad pointed at Jeff and I, and he said, "I'm going to tell you one time what my original Air Force serial number was when I first went in as an aviation cadet. I'm going to tell you one time, and you better remember that." And so to this day, I remember his serial number is 45637A. He told me one time, and I remembered, so I was a little bit scared because he was like, "You guys, you gotta pay attention."
In the course of his military career, Mert Baker logged more than 7,000 hours of flying time, flew 185 combat missions, and received a long list of awards, including the Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with 11 oak leaf clusters, and others. Mert retired from the Air Force in 1981 with the rank of Major General and continued working as a military contract consultant for many years. From Jennies to jets, he had quite the remarkable aviation career.
And ever since then, his nickname was Mert. Around age 3, the family moved to Fort Atkinson, where his dad later owned an ice cream plant. The family moved to Evansville during his last year of high school so that Grandpa could open another ice cream plant in that city. Although only living in Evansville a short time, he played football on the Evansville high school team. With a population of only 2,300 people, it was a very small high school. So Dad played both offense and defense. The kicker to this story is that after playing both offense and defense during the first half, he would put on a band uniform and march with a marching band playing his saxophone. This story never failed to amaze me. After serving in World War II, Mert went on to become a civilian flight instructor during the Korean War, flying the T-6 Texan. He was recalled back into the Air Force as a T-33 instructor pilot at McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. After 1,000 hours spent in the T-33, Mert became a B-47 instructor pilot, logging 1,200 hours in the B-47. Thinking of all his hours as an instructor, I asked him once if it was not a little scary turning your plane over to a student in the front seat. He said, no, not at all. I think Dad just had the self-confidence that he could control any situation. It did cause him to talk about the B-47 a little bit, though. The B-47 in its popular name Coffin Corner, which was when the B-47 was flying at about 35,000 feet at maximum speed. The stall speed was only 3 to 5 knots different from the Mach buffeting speed. So if the pilot got out of this narrow range of 3 to 5 knots different, the B-47 would stall. Now, in this situation constantly changed as the fuel burned off, so you're constantly adjusting the throttle and adjusting your speed because you had to stay within that 3 to 5 knot range. If the B-47 stalled, it could be recovered, but you would lose a tremendous amount of altitude. And in a combat situation, of course, that would be deadly. The B-47 first flew in 1947. It was an extremely advanced aircraft with a swept wing inspired by German wind tunnel test data that the American Army recovered. It had a bicycle landing gear, which required a little bit of adjustment for most pilots at that time. It was one of the first aircraft to utilize air-to-air refueling, and it usually required using JATO rocket-assisted bottles mounted at the rear of the fuselage, which could provide an additional 18,000 pounds of thrust for 12 seconds. Landing always incorporated a drogue chute. I assumed the drogue chute was just to slow the landing speed, but Dad said this was not the case. He said the landing approach was usually made with a 60% throttle setting, and the drogue chute was required because the early jet engines, the B-47 was a 6-engine bomber, but the early jet engines created in 1947 required a long time to spool up. So if you were landing and you need to make a go-around, you needed that drag chute to drop the drag chute to give you some instant acceleration because the engine wouldn't spool up fast enough to make a go-around. Dad said the B-47 handled like a fighter, and I think it was his favorite airplane to fly. In 1957, Dad was transferred across the runway to the Air Force office at the Boeing plant in Wichita. When the Milwaukee Braves made it to the 1957 World Series, he was determined to attend the series. The Air Force office at Boeing also had a C-47 that they used for logistics purposes, but no qualified C-47 pilot was interested in attending the game. So Dad had someone check him out in a few minutes and took a group of people from Boeing, Air Force people, to the game. Dad was always proud of his B-52 hours. He said he was only one of a handful of pilots that had flown every model of the B-52 from the B model to the H model. Dad was also a rabid Green Bay Packer fan throughout his life. While stationed at the General Dynamics plant in Fort Worth, every time the Packers came to play the Cowboys, he and Mom would be sure to drive to Dallas to attend a game. I think my brother Jeff Baker can fill a little more of the story in.
Well, it goes without saying that Dad passed the Packer thing down to me. I'm a Packer owner now, and we spent yesterday on a tour of Lambeau, so it was exciting. We loved coming back to Wisconsin. I mean, I was probably 5 years old when we left, and you know, our idea of getting away from the awful heat in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is you go up to Door County, you spend 3 or 4 days in August up there, you get a preseason game at the Packers, and head back to Tulsa. So it's, we've given that a shot several times, and it's great. I remember when I was about 12, my dad tried to generate some flying interest in me. Toward that end, he once gave me this great model airplane with a little Cox gas engine on it for Christmas. And at that time, at Christmas, we were stationed at McConnell Air Force Base, so it was right next to Cessna manufacturing. So on Christmas Day, there would be nobody in the parking lot, so he said, we're going out to the parking lot and give this a first-time fly. And he did, and he said, well, I'm a B-47 pilot, I can handle this first. So he took the thing, and we went, and it almost made it around the first time when it went straight up, straight down, just pieces everywhere. And he just said, get in the car. And I'm thinking, this isn't right, but almost 25 years later, to my great surprise, he bought me the replacement model for that aircraft as a wedding present. And I eventually flew that airplane with my son, and I think my wife can say that we did not crash it. And so he got a kick out of that. Late in his life, he suffered from liver cancer and would go over to he was living in Albuquerque, and he'd go over to the New Mexico Veterans Hospital to get his chemo treatment. He never spoke anything about this, but after he passed away, I had to go over to the VA and close out some records and do that sort of thing. And while I was over there, I ran across a military chaplain, and he surprised me with some stories about, he said, your dad would come in here almost every day, and even when he wasn't doing chemo, and sit with all the people doing the chemo treatments and listen to the old war stories and all that. And I thought, boy, I never knew anything like that, so it was really something. And it turned out that chaplain did his funeral, so it was extra plus. I would be remiss if I didn't mention how much my mom, which was his wife of 50 years, supported him over the years. She had one moment in time in March 1971 where there was an overlap that my brother, Mike, and myself and my dad were all in the Air Force at the same time, everybody but my mom. So it was pretty cool. One last thing that he passed on to me was the love of aviation, because I had always been interested. Of course, we had always grown up on Air Force bases. So over the years, I ended up working for Douglas Aircraft, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, everybody that bought everybody. And it was a great career. And again, I want to thank everybody for this honor of having my dad's induction.
Mike, Jeff.
Thank you, Jim, Mike, and Jeff. The stories are what's most fun for me to hear. I really enjoy those. Our next inductee is going to be presented by none other than 2022 inductee, Mrs. Rose Dorsey.
Good evening. Whoa, my heel just went into a hole. I knew I should have wore those flats. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, tonight truly is a momentous occasion as we gather to induct another remarkable individual into the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame. Over the past several months, I've had the extraordinary pleasure of getting to know tonight's inductee, Tom Bouchard. As we prepared for the evening, our conversations unveiled a remarkable truth. Aviation isn't just a passion for Tom, it's a legacy coursing through his veins. It's a legacy that spans generations and fills the skies with their expertise. And you'll learn more about that in just a bit. Tom, the man of the hour, has been an active pilot for an astounding 68 years. Imagine that. Just a week ago, he was up in the sky over Ashland, piloting a Cessna 172 that he owns with his daughter. It's this unparalleled dedication and love for flying that has brought him here tonight, receiving this recognition he truly deserves. Watch closely, and you'll certainly agree that Tom's legacy soars high above the clouds.
If Tom Bouchard doesn't have aviation in his blood or in his DNA, he certainly breathed it in at a very early age. His father, Harry Bouchard, earned a commercial pilot's license in 1930, bought a Curtiss Robin, and began barnstorming at Billings Air Park in Superior, Wisconsin. In the 1950s, there were logging camps on the Apostle Islands of Lake Superior. Harry had a contract to fly by ski plane to Outer Island, one of the remotest of the Apostles, to deliver men, equipment, and supplies from Ashland or Bayfield to the camps. As a teenager and student pilot, Tom sometimes rode along with Harry on those trips.
When I first started, we could go get a coyote, and there was a $20 bounty on them. So when we'd get the coyote, we'd sell it, turn it in for the bounty, and get $20. We could buy 100 gallons of gasoline for airplanes.
After graduating from high school, Tom earned his private pilot license when the Ashland Airport reopened in 1958. After an expansion project, Tom was the first pilot to land there. He earned his commercial ticket in 1962 and was hired as a corporate pilot, flying a Piper Aztec for an Ashland-based businessman. In the mid-1960s, Roy Schwery launched Mid-State Airways in Marshfield, Wisconsin, flying Beech 18s out of Marshfield, Wausau, Stevens Point, and other central Wisconsin cities to Milwaukee and Chicago. Mid-State was one of the nation's first commuter airlines, and it would become one of the most successful. When Schwery visited Ashland to consider air service to that city, it was Tom Bouchard who chauffeured him around town. Before Schwery left Ashland, he offered Tom a job, and in May 1966, Tom began flying Beech 18s for Mid-State. Tom graduated to the left seat and would eventually log more than 4,000 hours flying Beech 18s, picking his way around summer thunderstorms, descending to shed ice from the wings, and battling crosswinds on snow-covered runways. Winters in Ashland can be long and deep, and Tom spent many a cold morning preheating Mid-State's Beech 18s before his passengers arrived. On occasion, he helped plow the runway at Ashland so his scheduled flight could take off on time. And his job at Mid-State sometimes became a family affair when his wife and kids got up to help shovel the driveway at 5 a.m. so Tom could get to the airport.
When I first started flying from Mid-State, which was in '66, we'd go down VFR with the 18 and we'd call over Des Plaines for runway 22 to hold short of 9 or whatever one they were using. We'd get in and out of there all the time. Sometimes they'd be stacked up, and it was a lot of fun back then compared to now. That when I first started flying over here, we did not have transponders. And not only that, in the airline industry, we sold the ticket, loaded the bags, and flew the airplane.
When Mid-State upgraded to radar-equipped Beech 99s, Tom moved into that cockpit, and the flying got somewhat easier. When Shorey decided that his passengers deserved pressurization and air conditioning, he upgraded Mid-State's fleet to Schwergen Metroliners, and later to Fokker 27s. Tom Bouchard flew them all.
We had this gal that, anyway, she was a pilot for us, and she said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I said, "Didn't you see that deer?" Oh, she said something, "What happened on takeoff?" Well, I says, "Did it scare you?" Well, the thud did. And she was sitting, we hit it right underneath her seat. He landed, the new pilot landed on the end, and he cleared, and he said, there was the buck sitting right in the middle of the runway.
Through the 1980s and 90s, Tom was instrumental in bringing precision approach technology to Ashland's JFK Memorial, including the localizer, PAPIs, and eventually GPS. Tom Bouchard retired from corporate flying in 2004 at age 65, but he didn't give up aviation. He was appointed twice by the governor to the Wisconsin Council on Aeronautics and served on Ashland's Airport Commission. Tom's 3 children are all licensed pilots. Daughter Robin is a flight instructor building time towards an airline post, and son Scott owns and flies his own plane. Tom's son Kerry flies for a major U.S. airline, and Kerry's 3 children, Alec, Connor, and Arabella, are all licensed commercial pilots working toward airline careers. That's 4 generations of Bouchard aviators. Maybe old Harry Bouchard really did have aviation in his DNA.
In honoring a lifetime of aviation excellence, I introduce you to Tom Bouchard.
I was just telling Rose after that I don't have to say anything. But it was great. I have had a great life. But anyway, I'd like to thank the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame board members selecting me to become part of this group of amazing aviation enthusiasts and professionals. Some who have been my friends, my mentor, and I am truly honored and humbled on the selection. When I was first notified of my selection, I didn't feel the most worthy to be included with these people. But after a few days, it came. Apparently, everybody that's been selected, past, present, and future, not only had accomplished so much professionally, but they also had a passion and enthusiasm for aviation within our great state of Wisconsin. It was then I realized this is me. I have always passed the passion and always tried to pass it on to anyone who would listen. We all have dedicated time for promoting aviation in Wisconsin, either education, management, or just plain flying. We all have the drive and ambition, and more importantly, we have passed that down to our next generation. I'm looking at the wall in there earlier. I see Fritz Wolf, Tom Thomas, both who I've admired and appreciated while serving on the Bureau of Aeronautics. Harry Chaplin, Darrell Gibson, Noble Lee, sharing their passion, ideas to obtain aid for small airports in Wisconsin. Bill Amorti did the same, and also gave thousands of FAA check rides over the last 45 years. And good old Libby Parad, who was hollering at me for smoking on a ramp when I was a 16-year-old student pilot, and she became a great ambassador for the city of Cable. And always having fresh bakery available to Hall of Fame members. But I can't go on without bragging about Roy Schwery. Roy was not only my boss, he was my mentor. Roy loved Marshfield and he loved Mid-State Airlines. And he showed me the passion it takes to be a successful person, to be the safe and humble pilot, confident, a person that I carried throughout my career in Mid-State. Also, I spread the love of aviation within our state to promise safe training, safe flying, and a standard I carried for the rest of my career, both professionally and personal in aviation. My many thanks go to my coworkers in Mid-State. They've been there for me, and we've been in this all together for a long time. On the personal level, after being an active pilot for almost 70 years now, I'd like to take the passion I have for aviation and airport as the passion I learned from my father, a brainstormer in the 30s. And my flight instructor, Gordy Shevchuk, I feel have passed that on my children, grandchildren, and all whom are here tonight. They've all been supportive of me. My grandchildren, all my kids are pilots, all my grandchildren are commercial pilots, and they're working their way up. And at this point in my life, I'm grateful that my friends from Ashland, who are here with us, join me here tonight. They are here to help whenever I need help in Ashland. I want to recognize my nephew, niece, and their spouse for being here tonight. But none of us Bashards would be here if it wasn't for one person, my dear wife, Marcia. I'd like to have her stand up. So, anyway, we've been married almost 60 years, and she's put up with me. And unbelievable, she was the first female pilot to solo off Ashland Airport. Thank you, Marcia, for your present. Anyway, when we first started with Mid-State, I had her writing tickets while I was loading baggage. So she was in there right all the time, right from the word go. She'd take us to and from the airport. If we had pilots come up overnight, she'd make sure they got taken care of and to their hotels and whatever. Anyways, she soloed as a senior in high school in 1965. And she got so enthused that when we were flying fire patrol, she used to ride with me. And we had a Cessna 150, and she did real good with it. That's how she got so enthused. She went, and during this whole time, she went to all the kids' sporting events. They were all sports. They played almost all the sports in high school, and she was there from them. And she was there at every one of the kids when they soloed. So anyway, thank you, Marcia, and we love you very much. Again, at this, I want to take this time and be grateful, honored, and great part of history in the state of Wisconsin we did. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you, Rose, and congratulations, Tom, once again. Presenting our next inductee for enshrinement into the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame, Board Director Scott Green.
Thank you, Kurt. It is my honor this evening to play a small role in inducting Lynn Erickson into the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame. I'll tell you a little story of how I met Mr. Erickson. I got a call from an old family friend, Dwayne Essie. Does anybody here know Dwayne Essie? Dwayne called and he was putting together a little project to help assure the future of his airport, and he called a couple of his neighbors over. So I had across from me Jerry LeBaron. Does anybody know Jerry LeBaron? Jerry is the consummate project manager. He's done projects for Northrop, for Rockwell, and some say the Skunk Works, but you can't say that out loud because if you do, he's got to kill you. So you can't talk about that. And across from Jerry was Lynn Erickson. And Lynn had a little book under his arm called How to Assure the Future of Your Airport that he mentioned to me had been written by my dad 20 years earlier. And that was kind of cool. So the more I got to know Lynn Erickson, the more I realized that building an airport community for this man is like a chess game. Lynn is 10 steps ahead at any given time. He's putting the players in the places where they need to be and moving pieces around. And the way he does this is if he finds out there's a pilot moving to town, he'll call him and he'll find him a house, and he'll show him the house. He's actually got his real estate license, but he's never charged a fee for this service. He just wants to make sure that there's aviation enthusiasts in and around his particular airport. And I ended up being one of those chess pieces shortly after meeting Lynn, largely due to his enthusiasm about aviation. He spurred a nascent interest in aviation in me, and I got my pilot's license, and shortly thereafter bought into an airplane and a hangar on the Waunakee Airport. Thanks, Pat O'Malley, for helping to make that. Anybody ever heard of Pat O'Malley? It's Waunakee night here at the Aviation Hall of Fame. And so Lynn played a big part in that, and I'm really thankful to be a part of one of Lynn's aviation communities. Not to be satisfied with perfection one time, Lynn has moved on to another project nearby, another country airport in Sauk City. And I highly encourage any of you who have the opportunity to talk to Lynn about what may happen there. It's well worth your time. It's very exciting things going on there at Sauk City. And in this little book of my dad's, there's one message that Dad wanted everybody to understand more than any other, and that is that every airport needs a champion. And in that little group of Wisconsin aviation royalty that Dwayne assembled together around that table, Lynn Erickson is their airport's best champion ever. Let's learn more about Lynn's career and what he's doing in his retirement. Please roll the video.
Never give up, said Winston Churchill, on something you can't go a day without thinking about. Lynn Erickson spent his early childhood in Minot, North Dakota, within a stone's throw of the Minot Airport. One day, Lynn's father arranged a local flight for Lynn and his cousin, both 6 years old. When the flight was over, Lynn climbed out of the airplane with a dream that would in time become an unshakable resolve. Young Lynn had every prospect of taking flight lessons when he was old enough. But then disaster struck. Medical expenses for his mother's illness bankrupted the business. His parents divorced, and at age 11, Lynn was sent to live with his grandparents on a hard-scrabble North Dakota farm.
I was on a farm in western North Dakota, not very far from the Minot Air Force Base. They didn't have any restrictions on breaking the sonic boom back then. And we would hear that regularly during the day. To me, it was music. I liked it. Here I am, on my tractor, moving around at 5 miles an hour or so. And I could hear this airplane coming, even over the tractor. I think it might have been the F-100, comes smoking right down the road, and he turns and waves at me. He saw me there on the tractor, and he just smokes on by.
With no money for lessons, but having a strong work ethic, Lynn decided the only avenue to a pilot's license was the military. In his senior year at high school, during the Vietnam War, Lynn visited an Army recruiter to ask about enlisting to fly helicopters. But Lynn wore glasses, and the recruiter made it clear that Lynn's eyesight ruled out military pilot training. When a draft notice arrived, Lynn chose to enlist for 3 years to get the choice of his duty station. He chose Europe and was off to Germany with his new bride. The military, Lynn said, gave him discipline and focus that he had been unable to find in North Dakota.
In the military, I indicated that there was a drill sergeant in my basic training, so he started me on the leadership track early. And they recognized something that I wasn't aware of. And the interesting thing about it, I graduated the top of one of the 4 for each platoon. And I was just a Spec 4. I was just a technical specialist at the time. So here are all these guys, they're E5s, E6s, E7s. This is something they're checking off to further their career. And they voted for me. And so that was quite a deal.
Nearby was a servicemen's aero club, and Lynn wasted no time starting flight lessons. When his 3-year enlistment was done, he mustered out, but his dream of flying was alive again. Then, with his private ticket in one hand and the GI Bill in the other, this young man knew exactly what he wanted to do. At Spartan School of Aeronautics in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Lynn's GI benefits would pay for most of Lynn's flight training, but nothing for living expenses. With the savings from working 2 jobs and a chest freezer full of beef, a gift from his father, he and his wife headed for Tulsa.
My dad, he helped me as much as he could, but the best thing he could do was give me a small freezer, a small freezer full of beef. We loaded the freezer up with beef, put it in the back of our pickup truck with a topper on it, and hung the cord out the back. So everywhere we went, we'd plug that freezer in to keep everything okay.
With no financial help from the family, Lynn knew he had to finish training before his savings ran out. He threw himself into it and earned his instrument, commercial, CFI, commercial helicopter, and CFIIA ratings all in less than 8 months, a process that would take most students 2 years or more.
I scheduled myself for just as much flying as I could. The VA restricted the flying to only 3 hours per day. If I couldn't be on the books for that schedule, I would be there, and as soon as the time came where the airplane had to be spoken for, and if it wasn't, I was there, and then I flew. So I flew absolutely as much as I could. And Joanne, she worked 2 jobs. She worked during the day and in the evening. In the evening I was home and I did my studying and whatnot and watched our son.
With the bank account and the freezer nearly empty, Lynn found a job as an instructor for a flight program at the University of Minnesota at Bemidji.
And the neat thing about it was non-stop flying. The first year, I took 2 days off. And that was because the flying was there. You know, that's when the students needed to fly. It was on the weekends, on the holidays, and all that stuff. And that was very satisfying.
Still, he found time to get a seaplane rating, a multi-engine rating, and a tailwheel endorsement.
That's a cool story because there's a gentleman there, Ralph Moberg, and now I'm not sure, but he may be in the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame. He was probably an old guy then, about my age. But here I am, a young guy, and he kind of takes me under his wing. And Ralph, and you got to understand Ralph, he just says, "Here, read this book." So, you know, I go through the book and all that stuff. The next day we go out and he says, asks if I read the book, and I says, "Yeah, I read." He says, "Well, let's go." So off we go. We fly for a while, and Ralph says, "That's good, you can drop me off, you go practice." So that was the extent of my initial training.
After a year and a half at Bemidji, Lynn landed his first corporate flying job with a large construction company. While there, he earned his air transport pilot certificate and was rated in Cessna citations. 5 years later, he was hired by Cessna Aircraft Company as a demonstration pilot, flying turboprops and later jets to prospective customers all over the world. He also flew as part of a worldwide tour to introduce the Cessna Caravan.
So our group was tasked with doing that worldwide introductory tour. And we had 5 airplanes, serial numbers 1 through 5, and they just went to the compass, you know, wherever they needed to go. So I picked up the airplane in Calcutta, India. And all these different cultures you're dealing with. And I was afraid to eat the food, I was afraid to drink the water, and we couldn't get the airplane out of there. We kept, you know, we'd go to the airport, "No, we can't let you go today." And finally, on the 3rd day, he had his book, he says, "Oh, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be difficult." So I laid a few rupees in there, and he closed it up, and he says, "I think we can leave today."
After several years at Cessna, Lynn moved to Rayovac Corporation, a Madison-based manufacturer of batteries, where he successfully built the company's flight department from scratch. After retiring from corporate flying, he was a key mover in improving the Sauk City Airport. And establishing a thriving residential air park at Waunakee.
The airport here is kind of a surprise for people when they're visiting. We think that quite a few of the residents of Waunakee, when they have someone come to visit, they like to drive past the airport and everybody goes, "What? There's an airport here?" And it's just part of the character of Waunakee, and thankfully the community has embraced that. I helped design this building and put together the whole project to get this building put together like it is now. So there was a lot of work to be done that I put together in the design, the marketing, and the structure of the project itself. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to do here.
Lynn has achieved his dreams of flying through passion, hard work, and good luck. Next to the flying, he says what has always been most satisfying is the people he has met, trained, mentored, or worked with.
Much like that first chief pilot that I had that connection with back in Bemidji, and you see these young people that are there, they're working, they're not really sure what they're interested in. And it was always very satisfying to be able to make a connection for some young person that you had some interaction with. It was always a goal of mine to do that, since aviation had been so good to me.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is just overwhelming for me. You'll have to bear with me. And it was for an ATP license. I took a check ride with a gentleman by the name of Lindbergh, but it was John Lindbergh. No relation, and it was spelled differently. But it's great to be here among friends, friends that I have not yet met, and my family. And I consider everybody in aviation a part of my family. Part of that is I have a sister in Alaska, I have a sister in Pennsylvania, and I have a sister in Arizona. Maybe they're trying to tell me something, and I'm not sure. Trying to be as far away from me as they can. As you saw, I've had an unbelievable career in aviation. It's been 38 years of flying professionally. And in that 38 years, unlike a lot of people that are in the aviation business, I've never been without a job. So that in itself is pretty amazing, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And you can see from my humble beginnings that that resonates very well with me, and I've made it my passion, aviation to be my passion, and I've made it my passion to give back as much as I can to aviation in return. The experience that I had in project management and design from building projects with Rayovac led me to volunteer for the work that we did in Wanakee. When we first moved there in 1990, Jerome Ripp, the owner of the airport and the founder of the airports in 1946, we'd been approaching him about some long-term assurances that we would be able to live there, enjoy our airport, enjoy our hangars, and that we'd have a long-term outlook for everything. He would always defer, saying, no, I'm not ready yet, I'm not ready yet. That's how I became involved in the Sauk Prairie Airport. I had built a hangar there, so I became much involved there as well. And some of the things that we didn't discuss was there was an awful lot of things going on behind the scenes at the Sauk Prairie Airport at the time where a person took over the airport that had not the best interest of the airport in mind, and we were trying real hard to prevent that airport from going away as well. So I worked there in Sauk Prairie Airport as well. But finally in 2005, when Jerome decided he was going to sell, we sent the local boy, the local Wanakee boy, Pat O'Malley, to discuss the sale of the airport with Jerome, and he agreed that he would do it. So we put together that program, and believe it, well, when I say it, is it takes a village to save an airport. And had we not done that, Jerome Ripp passed away just 16 months after we bought the airport from him. So that airport was probably within 16 months of going away. But it involves a lot of people. You've got to get a lot of people involved. You have to talk to a lot of people. It's about relationships, and you establish those relationships with the pilots that are there. A lot of people that were there with money and time. We turned the project into a community thing where the airport community got together, and we built the new hangars and whatnot that were there. So that has been very satisfying for me over the years. And interestingly enough, now we're seeing a big influx of pilots. The airlines are the airlines are hiring hundreds of pilots on a monthly basis. And we're going to see a groundswell of young people that have finally good paying jobs flying for the airlines, and that will, although not all of them, a lot of them will have that passion that everybody in this room has. That's why you're here. And I see that as an opportunity for air parks, an opportunity for airports, and we have to, all of us, work towards saving our airports. If you're involved in an airport now, find out if there's something you can do. If there's something that you can participate in, it takes a lot of people to keep an airport going. Recently, we had the Portage thing going on, where the Common Council had come out with on a Friday that the following Thursday they were going to vote on closure of the airport. That was a total surprise. We marshaled as much support as we could. We had a support event at the Portage Airport. It was a really hot day, but we had 25 airplanes fly in. The Channel 15 News was there. And then the subsequent, that was on the Sunday, on the 20th of August. And on the following 24th, they had a meeting, Common Council meeting. And myself and other people that I know here got up and spoke to the benefit of the airport. It was a listening session that lasted probably an hour and a half. And every single person that got up and talked was in total support of the airport. And it really thwarted their effort to put that to a vote. What they did then was they tabled it to be discussed or to be voted on their first meeting in January. We thought, hoping that, the pilots won't come back in January, nobody's around here, it's cold, nobody wants to be in Portage in January. But there was so much support for it, 100% support. The following month in September, when they went to vote on that, they abandoned that resolution, and so the airport will now be open. So your support, your caring, your being there is a very important thing. Advocacy works. So and when I retired, I needed something to keep me busy, so I put in a fuel system. I went to the owner of the airport at Sauk Prairie. He never had fuel there. And I told him, I said, it's kind of like moving to a town that doesn't have a gas station. You know that, of course. And I was able to sell them on the idea. So I put in the fuel system there. I was very enthused about some of these new unleaded fuels that are coming out, and that's in support of all that. So come to Sauk and fill up with unleaded fuel. Also, when we were working with everybody in Wanakee, because the growth of the village of Wanakee was so huge, we wanted to do something to let people know within the community what we're all about. So you probably see these cards on your table that say, thanks for visiting the Wanakee Airport. We put together a video. It's a 27-minute video. Excuse me. It talks about Wanakee and about how we put everything together, how we interact with the community. We have the support of the village in everything in Wanakee. That's why I say it takes a village. So support your airport. The future is really great for aviation, and thank you so much. Thank you to the Hall of Fame for seeing these kind of things that are going on, understanding how much work it takes, and my family for being here, my friends from the community for being here, and all of you for being here. Thank you.
Lynn just said, do I get to keep this? Yes, you do. Congratulations. Thank you both. Finally tonight, presenting Steve Krogh for enshrinement into the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame, Director John Dorsey.
Thank you, Kurt. Just as you know me, I'm always going to try and educate us and ask quiz questions. So here's the quiz question for this evening, and that is, what is the percentage of women pilots in the pilot population of this country? 8, 6, anybody? 6, 7, well, okay. So we're going to settle in some number less than 10%, and I think that's pretty accurate. Used to be 6%. Some people say it's more, some people say it's less. But that's because they don't know Steve Krogh. So what I'd like to ask is for all the female students and pilots that have trained either with or at Cub Air Flight to stand up. Thank you, ladies. Now, I'm not real good at math, and I didn't count that very quick, but it looks like a lot more than 6% to me. It's a real treat for me to be able to introduce Steve. We've crossed paths a bunch of times. I've renewed as flight instructor, and now I'm working for him as a flight instructor. It's a small, small world. Anyway, let's watch this video and tells the whole story about Steve Krogh.
As a boy growing up on a Minnesota farm, Steve Krogh looked up each day as the North Central Airlines DC-3 passed directly overhead on its daily flight from Minneapolis to Brookings, South Dakota. The sight of that graceful airliner inspired a dream of aviation, a dream that Steve would fulfill as a pilot, airplane owner, instructor, writer, and mentor. And Steve Krogh has spent much of his adult life making that dream come true for other young men and women. Steve's own dream of flight began to come true in 1968 during his junior year in college, when he took his first flying lesson. He passed his private pilot check ride in less than a year with just under 40 hours of flight time. Six months later, he was introduced to tailwheel airplanes with his first hour of dual instruction in a Piper PA-18 Super Cub. 4 flights earned him his tailwheel endorsement. He might not have known it at the time, but he was seriously hooked on tail draggers. After college graduation and a brief stint in the Army, Steve continued building flight time and adding ratings. In less than 1 year in 1972 and 73, he earned his commercial ticket and his multi-engine and instrument ratings and became a certified flight instructor. The dream of flight had certainly caught hold of Steve and never let go. In the early 1980s, Steve and his wife Sharon moved to Hartford, Wisconsin. There were a few tailwheel airplanes at Hartford's airport, but their owners were not flying them. The FAA had recently declared that tailwheel pilots needed a tailwheel endorsement, signed off by a tailwheel instructor. But there were no tailwheel instructors to be found, so their airplane sat idle. But Steve could fix that. He quickly renewed his CFI rating and began training those pilots on weekends. It did not take long before word got around and other pilots started showing up for tailwheel instruction. To meet the demand, Steve bought a slightly ragged 7AC Champ and began offering tailwheel instruction on weekends and summer evenings.
One of the things we do here, we revive the old tradition of making sure that on the day of solo, we cut their shirt tail off. And if you look back over on the wall there, there's maybe a fourth of the shirts there. And it's really interesting when these kids come back 2 years, 5 years, 10 years later, and they can walk over to that wall and say, there's my shirt, that's the day I soloed.
The Champ was fun, but Sharon and Steve's true love was Piper J3 Cubs. Out went the Champ in trade for a nice J3 with a 90 horsepower Continental engine. And before long, Steve was instructing in the Cub all day on the weekends and several evenings during the week.
The idea of just getting out there, and I'm not one that puts in my little earbuds and listens to tunes. I want to listen to the airplane, smell the alfalfa, and just thoroughly enjoy and relax. Every morning when I take off with a student, I'd look out and look at that wing and go, oh, I can't believe it, we're flying.
After 15 years of instructing in his spare time, Steve left his successful advertising career and with Sharon's full support, opened a small flight school called Cub Air Flight at Hartford. Word spread quickly, and it took just 5 days to sign up 21 students. All of Cub Air's flight training was done in Piper Cubs, except for the required night flying, instrument, and tower work. For those lessons, a tired Cessna 150 served quite well enough. Today, Cub Air Flight employs several instructors and continues to train about 20 new pilots and sign off about 20 new tailwheel endorsements each year. Its students come from all over the U.S. and a dozen foreign countries, and many of them have gone on to careers in commercial or military aviation.
And some of these kids have really, I'm very proud of them. There's a number of these kids that have gone on to bigger and better things. There's one kid that really made an impression on me. Nick Koza was his name. I got acquainted with him when his parents camped next to us at Oshkosh many, many years ago. Nick was, I think, 7 years old at the time. Nick went on, and he went through Marine ROTC at, I think, Kansas State, and then went right into the Marines and the aviation program. Nick is now flying F-35s. He's a major, making a career out of it at this point, and just having a ball flying F-35s. I'm so proud of that kid.
Steve also publishes newsletters for 3 type clubs, and over the years, he has expanded those newsletters from mimeograph sheets to world-class publications. Steve has been very active with EAA on several advisory committees and as an author, vintage board member, and volunteer. He hosted the 75th and 80th anniversary celebrations of the Piper Cub at Cub Air, and each time organized an early morning mass arrival flights of Cubs to Air Venture.
We had arrangements with EAA and with the Tower people to fly a convoy of 75 Cubs to Oshkosh. We had a lot of great ground crew people, and the people that participated in this were fantastic, absolutely fantastic people. So the morning that we're launching, I was to call the Tower right at sunrise and let them know that the first one was off. So when the first one took off, I called them, said, first one is launched, 74 more to go. Call us when the last one launches, okay? And on the 75th one, I called the Tower, and I said, 75 is off? And he started laughing. He says, 1 is just landing. So we had Cubs in tandem landing for almost an hour.
And he never forgot that farm boy who dreamed of flying while a DC-3 passed high overhead. In short, Steve Krogh is a perfect example of how one man's passion for aviation can help make the dream of flight a reality for so many other dreamers.
So passion is a common theme, as you can tell. Every single one of our inductees tonight had mentioned the word passion. Steve exemplifies that. Please join me in welcoming Steve Krogh. Steve.
Wow, what an evening. I feel a little overwhelmed and humbled by following the 3 acts before me. It doesn't feel like I should be here after listening to all of the things that each and every one of them have accomplished in their flying career. But you'll have to put up with me anyway. A week or so ago, I wrote a speech that I was planning to give tonight, and I thought it was a mistake at first, but then in the long run, it was a very good thing. I took it home, handed it to my wife. I said, "What do you think, hon? This is what I wrote to talk about on Saturday night." She looked at it for about 10 seconds, ripped it up, and said, "This sounds like a fake movie star giving a fake speech accepting an Oscar. This is trash." So I started over.
So I think she's got me on the right direction now. I really appreciate, John, your endorsement, and I really appreciate and I'm humbled by the Hall of Fame and allowing me to be a part of this very fine group. I feel very honored by that. As it was mentioned in the video, I started flying 50-some years ago. I was 12, and got my license while I was in college. But the real part of my aviation story started about 30 years ago. I was working in marketing, had been for about 20 years, 25 years at that point, and had this passion for flight, and I was giving instruction in tailwheel airplanes nights and weekends all during that. And I had this vision that someday I wanted to have a flight school, but a flight school that filled a little niche, a niche that involved tailwheel airplanes. So I started buying J3 Cubs. And I didn't really share this vision of mine with anybody at the airport at the time. I just started buying Cubs, and every time I did, the guys at the airport would look at me or come to me and say, "What the hell are you doing? You can only fly one at a time. What do you need 2 Cubs or 3 Cubs for?" I said, "You'll learn someday." So after about 10 years of doing this, I finally sat down with Sharon and I put the plan together. And I said, I'm going to hang up my suit and tie, and I'm never going to wear one ever again. And I'm going to wear T-shirts and shorts, except in the wintertime, and I'll wear jeans then. And I'm going to teach people how to fly airplanes. She thought I was crazy, but she's put up with me for, 46 years now, Sharon? And she's a psych nurse, retired, so I trained her well. Or she trained me, I'm not sure. But after we decided to go ahead with this, I launched the program, or launched the school, April 1st, April Fool's Day, in, I believe it was 2004. I was expecting probably 6 students. That would give me plenty of time to goof off, write articles, ride a motorcycle, and do some flying. Without ever advertising, but only with word of mouth, I had 21 students sign up in the first 5 days the door was open. And the rest is really history. It has been like that in, this is the 19th year now, I believe it is, that we've been doing this. And I've had the pleasure of working with dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of students. The one thing that I have to really say in regard to the success of Cub Air flight and what we're doing there is the fact that we have, over the years, brought in a number of young people, students, instructors, many of whom are here tonight, and I'm Addie. And as a result, we've not only had, I think, a first-class flight school, but it's really become kind of a cult family thing. Once you get involved with Cub Air flight and learn to fly there, you become a member of our family. And that has stayed that way for years and years and years. It's so interesting when kids come back that learned to fly 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. They come back, and whenever they're in town, they always take a few minutes to stop and get reacquainted at the airport, and maybe bring a brew or 3 to share for old time's sake. But the first thing they do after saying hello is go to that wall of all the T-shirts. And they can tell, every one of them can tell exactly where their T-shirt is and the day they soloed. And to me, I think that's pretty special that we have that connection. So this evening, I would like to thank everyone that's here, but especially thank my family, which is the Cub Air family. I don't have any personal family here tonight. They're scattered all over the country like your family was, or you mentioned. But my family is here. And they're the students, the instructors, and spouses, and girlfriends, and families of everyone that has ever been a part of Cub Air flight. And just for the heck of it, if you don't mind, everybody that has some involvement with, past, present, with Cub Air, I'd sure like for you to stand up for just a minute. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That is awesome. If any of you saw Blazing Saddles years ago, there was a line in there where the governor walks into the office and he goes, "Wow!" Now you're going to have to figure out what scene that is, but that's the first word that came to mind when I was told that I was going to be inducted tonight, was that word. So for everyone here tonight, and especially family, friends, spouses, moms, dads of students, and I hope I haven't forgotten anyone, and especially my child bride of 46 years, she stuck by me. Why? I don't know sometimes. But when I hung up my suit and went to work, working with the airplanes, she managed to put up with that. Some days are better than others, but overall, it's been a really fun ride, and I really have to thank her, especially for the support that she has shown me and stood by me. And the last thing I have to say is that I dug out this suit this morning. I vowed 20-some years ago I'd never wear the damn thing ever again. I hated suits. I wore suits and ties for 30-some years. Hated every minute of it. But she convinced me I should clean up my act a little bit, that a clean t-shirt wasn't quite enough tonight. So here I am. The last time I had this thing on was 14 years ago for a wedding. Then I hung it in the closet until this morning. Damn thing has shrunk. I was told earlier tonight that you got to hang it toward the left side of the closet instead of the right side, because anything to the right always shrinks more. So I'll remember to hang it to the left side when I'm done tonight with this. So again, thank you. Thank you all for being here. A special thanks to the Cub Air family and friends and supporters of the Cub Air flight. And a special thank you to the Hall of Fame. It's most appreciated.
How about one more round of applause for all of our inductees tonight? What an awesome evening and an awesome place with just some incredible people. I have a few more people to thank before we close tonight. One is the EA staff, Hannah and Rob. Rob's in the back, if you could raise your hand. He's in that, it's not a screen there or anything, it's just an open air thing so he can see what we're doing. Rob makes us look awesome up here, so Rob, thanks for making us sound and look so good. The staff and owners of LaSure's Catering for the meal this evening. And finally, one enormous, Kyle, don't walk away. You have to turn and come back. There you go. Scott and Kyle Guyette in the back. They're the unsung heroes of the videos that were produced in support of everybody. Thank you guys so much for your partnership. These videos are not only for tonight, but they actually become heirlooms for the family. So thank you guys for putting all your heart and soul into everything. As you leave this evening, I want you to take a moment to consider what your experience was here tonight. And this is a special place, not just built for many people, but built by those people. Many of them who've built this museum have been in the Aviation Hall of Fame. And we like to continue telling the stories of the people who are making a difference now. I'm hopeful that your experience tonight might inspire you to become a member. But more than that, I'm hopeful that you leave with a renewed appreciation for the stories of the lives of people around you. You might take an extra few minutes to strike a conversation with someone you think you know and ask them what their life's passion is. They might inspire you back to push past your own perceived limitations. And maybe if you find someone whose story you believe should be told again and honored, maybe you consider nominating them to an organization like the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame, so that they may continue to inspire others. Please welcome back to the stage for the benediction, Dr. Bill Blank.
Is this better? Thank you, Kurt. Congratulations to the inductees. It was a wonderful evening. When Judy and I were thinking about putting this together tonight, I ran across something called the Flyer's Prayer by the aviation poet Patrick Phillips. I thought that it was quite appropriate to use tonight. When this life I'm in is done, and at the gates I stand, my hope is that I answer all his questions on command. I doubt he'll ask me of my fame or of all the things I knew. Instead, he'll ask of rainbows sent on rainy days I flew. The hours logged, the status reached, the ratings will not matter. He'll ask me if I saw the rays and how he made them scatter. Or what about the droplets clear I spread across your screen? And did you see the twinkling eyes of student pilots keen? The way your heart jumped in your chest that special solo day. Did you take time to thank the one who fell along the way? Remember how the runway lights looked one night long ago when you were lost and found your way, and how you still don't know. How fast, how far, how much, how high, he'll ask me not these things, but did I take the time to watch the moonbeams wash my wings? And did you see the patchwork fields and mountains I did mold, the mirrored lakes and velvet hills, of these did I behold. The wind he flung along my wings on final almost stalled, and did I know it was his name that I so fearfully called? When the goals are reached at last, when all the flying's done, I'll answer him with no regret. Indeed, I had some fun. So when these things are asked of me and I can reach no higher, my prayer this day his hand extends to welcome home a flyer.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you all for attending this wonderful evening. Please drive home safe. Here ends our ceremony, and we do hope to see you again next year at the 2024 ceremony. Thank you and good night.